Hi everybody, I want to talk to you about ego. Ego is a word that's used a lot of different ways, and so it can be confusing. So I'm going to tell you about how I use ego and why I use it that way. First of all, as background, you should know that ego literally means I in Latin. So when Freud first used it to talk about it as a part of our psyche, he was using it to describe the part of you that identifies as you. It's very simple that way. Now, a lot of times in spiritual circles, the ego is kind of the whipping boy of the personality structure. The idea is that we should move beyond ego, that ego is driven by base needs and desires, and so smush and smash and destroy ego. So a lot of times, especially some interpretations of Eastern teachings, have really focused on this idea that you should try to destroy ego. This is a terrible idea. If we really were to destroy the ego, we couldn't function in this world. So let me tell you what the ego's job is and what its job isn't. So the ego is a really important part of your psyche. It's a really important part of our structure. What it does is it gives us a sense of self, a sense of oneness, of being one person, even when we're very fragmented. Now, most people are very fragmented, which means that we have a ton of different parts, and all those parts have different kinds of motivations. Some of them are motivated by trauma, some are motivated by desires, some have big misunderstandings. We have a lot of different parts, and each of these parts has a sort of goal and motivation. Now, if you think about who you are in different circumstances, you would probably notice for most people that you're really different times. And yet you have a single sense of self. If you didn't have egoic power, if you didn't have power of the ego, you would feel like you're actually like multi-personality, like you're split and you're changing personalities from moment to moment or from place to place or situation to situation. That would be very distressing. Right? And it would not allow us to function in the world. So the ego lets us feel like one person. And how it does that is it sort of blurs all those things. It blurs all those different aspects of ourselves and gives us this strong sense of I am and I choose and I'm one person, right? Now that's important. The problem is it's a big job and it's a difficult job. And so when the ego is that taxed, when it has to do that much work to maintain this sense of coherent self, then it also sort of oversteps in a lot of places. And it really is like a small child who is given too much power and responsibility. If you give a 5-year-old power and responsibility in a household, they'll try to take it and they'll also be very anxious and stressed. Right? And so they'll kind of wield their power destructively often. So the ego can be very destructive in the way that it's working when it's overtaxed and sort of trying to do too much. So here's what we do instead. Well, what we're trying to do is transformation-wise, what the work that we do in the Sophia Wisdom Centers in the mystical path is very psychologically integrated. So the goal is, what we're doing is we want to help people become aware of and transform and bring real cohesion to their disparate parts. Okay, so instead of the ego trying to have to hold on to all this complexity and try to sort of make rationalizations and justifications for our behavior, for trying to block out certain things and deny other things, right? It's a very complex, hard job for the ego when our parts are so different and not unified and actually fighting with each other. So when we do actual transformation work, then we can bring harmony and unity to those disparate parts. We can bring some real cohesion, and the ego's job gets easier and easier. And as it does that, the ego can actually relax and settle down and do only its job. And your soul personality does the job of holding a deeper sense of self, a deeper sense of cohesion. Okay, hopefully that's clear. That's complex, I know. So there's a lot of teaching on it, and we can go back and do more of that if you come to some of my classes or seminars. But I do want to make this one point right now. I want to tell you about the bus metaphor because people love this metaphor. So when we talk about parts, we really want to accept all our parts. We don't want to be in a system of rejecting and calling parts of ourselves bad and other parts good and struggling with ourselves and fighting with ourselves. Every part has a purpose. Every part was created for a good reason at the time. Okay. We want to understand and accept all our parts without letting them take control of our decision making. So the metaphor for this is you have a bus. All the parts are on board. We want to have everyone welcome and everyone present and get to know everyone, all the parts. But we don't want to have parts taking over driving and making decisions for your whole self. So you can have anger and resentment. You can have a part that's really like vindictive and really wants to do harm to anyone who it felt slighted by, right? That's an okay feeling. That's an okay way to be. You don't want it to be driving the bus. So if that part drives the bus, then you're going to go around being vindictive, and that's destructive, right? So we want to have that part welcome. We want to understand it and actually let it heal. And we can't do that if we reject it. Be like, it's horrible that I have these thoughts about being vindictive. I hate myself, or this shame around all this like aggression that I feel towards people that have hurt me. That rejection, that shame and invalidation of the feeling actually keeps that thing from transforming and healing. So remember the metaphor of the bus. I want all the parts to be welcome. We want to know them and hear them and understand them and let them really come to a natural harmony and unity with one another. But in the meantime, we have to choose who's driving the bus. We have to choose not to let our actions be dictated by one of those parts that's wounded and being that would be destructive if it's allowed to act. So that's the difference. We want everyone on the bus. We want to accept everyone on the bus, but we also have to choose who's driving. And in order to do that, you really got to do the work. So that's great to know, but in order to really be able to choose who's driving and also do the integration work, you got to start the spiritual work. And I recommend you do that with a spiritual advisor in a structure with a system that works. You can do that anywhere that has those aspects. What you want to look for is, one, a structure that's effective. So a community that's healthy and vibrant. You want to look for an advisor that is conscientious and experienced and loving. You want to look for practices that support and practically let you do the work. And you want to look for, obviously, integrity in all aspects of the training and organization. We are one of the places you can do that, which is Sophia Wisdom Centers. And for those who have a calling towards mystical work and this kind of frame of Christian mysticism, then we're definitely an awesome place to do that work. But the key factors you can look for in other organizations as well. And the most important thing is that there's a good understanding of the psyche, there's a compassionate presence, and a structure that has practical elements. So blessings on that journey, and love to you all.